and iPlayer.
You're watching BBC One Wales, the early evening BBC News now with Sophie Raworth and Lucy Owen.
A storm sweeps across the UK, bringing more widespread disruption. In the Highlands, a major incident is declared as miles of cars become stranded in the snow.
Within minutes, it was just complete whiteout. The traffic had come to an absolute halt, and we were going nowhere.
Jacques Delors, the former European Commission president and architect of the modern EU, has died at the age of 98. How the National Trust is helping to come up with solutions to help nature cope with our increasingly unpredictable seasons. And testing out a driverless car, as the Transport Secretary says they should be on Britain's roads within 2 years. Good evening. A major incident has been declared in Scotland with long queues of vehicles stranded in the snow on the A9 in the Highlands. Storm Garrett has been sweeping across the UK, bringing snow, high winds and heavy rain. Around 20,000 homes are still without power in northern Scotland, with some in rural areas expected to be cut off for 2 days. On the roads, trains, ferries and at airports, people are facing delays and hazardous conditions. Our correspondent Fiona McCullum reports.
As you can see, we are stuck on the A9 just south of Dalwhinnie.
Thick snow and ice took grip of the A9, the main trunk road between Perth and the Highlands. A major incident was declared. Richard was at a standstill with his wife and daughter for over 6 hours, trying to get home to Bristol after Christmas.
So yeah, when we set off from Lochlegan, it was just raining, and the snow was actually melting away. It seemed to be all right, and then as soon as we got to Dalwhinnie, it just was a complete whiteout. The skies opened, and it was within minutes. It was just complete whiteout. The traffic had come to an absolute halt, and we were going nowhere.
Away from the whiteout, and it was the rain that was causing problems in Cooper and Fife. Some residents had to be rescued from their homes after severe flooding in the town. Specialist boats were brought in to help.
I woke up and I could hear some rustling noises, and I looked out and it's 2 to 3 feet of water up to my bed. I'm thinking most things in the lounge are going to be gone. It's obviously not what you want to wake up to just after Christmas.
In Aberdeenshire and Angus, more than 20,000 people are without power. Winds reached over 85 miles an hour in some parts.
Storm Garrett has mainly impacted Scotland at the moment, with around 20,000 customers without power, access proving a real challenge for our engineers, and weather is expected to be worse again overnight, so we are keeping a very close eye on that. If you are in an area affected by a weather warning, we would urge you to make preparations just now, but know that engineers and customer service teams, thousands of people, are working around the clock to reconnect power as quickly as they safely can.
Trains were hit too. Not only were services cancelled, but some passengers were stuck on board for hours. A tree fell on this line at Dumbarton, and it remains blocked by flooding at Bowling.
Our advice to passengers, as always, is to check before you travel. Take a look at the ScotRail website or download the app. Disruption will continue into tomorrow in some parts of the country.
2 top-flight football games were postponed, including Ross County's trip to Ibrox. A series of Met Office yellow rain and snow warnings are still in place tonight. Flood warnings and alerts will also continue into tomorrow. Fiona McCullum, BBC News, Glasgow.
Well, let's go to Preston and our correspondent Fiona Trott, who has more on that travel disruption. And what is the situation there? There's been all kinds of problems with rail today, hasn't there?
That's right, yes, that severe weather in Scotland has had a knock-on effect for rail passengers here in Lancashire. Earlier today there were no West Coast trains running between Preston and Glasgow because of flooding between Carlisle and Lockerbie. So this afternoon there were hundreds of passengers stuck here at Preston. The solution has been these coaches you can see behind me here. They have been queuing up to take hundreds of passengers up to Glasgow. That's going to take at least 3 hours. Now, these were passengers who were already on the train from Euston heading up to Scotland when the cancellation announcements were made, or people who didn't know about the cancellations and turned up here at Preston anyway. So that's what Avanti West Coast have told us. This isn't a replacement bus service. This is just to take passengers up to Scotland to clear the backlog here at the station. Passengers here have been telling us that a queue of people was going the length of the platform, both inside and out, to get on those coaches. Some of them waiting for hours in the cold, some of them quite angry, saying that communication has been poor. So the very latest that we have from Avanti West Coast right now is not to try to travel north of Preston. Tickets are still valid tomorrow and Friday. A limited service is running now. That's due to high winds at a reduced speed up to Scotland. And the high winds and extreme weather will continue to affect services today and tomorrow. So, of course, check before you travel.
Fiona, thank you. Well, let's go to the Highlands now. Ian McInnes is there by the A9, just south of Inverness, where there have been all kinds of problems today. Drivers stuck in the snow. What's the latest there now?
Well, it's been a day of widespread disruption, as we heard there, with wind, rain and snow all having an impact. We woke up to very windy conditions, first of all, with lots of trees down, lots of power lines down, around 20,000 homes still without power this evening. Then it was flooding in the central part of the country, in Fife especially, was badly affected. And then as the day wore on, it was snow that's really affected this main route between the Highlands and the central belt. People stuck there, a major incident declared, and over the last few hours there's been really hard work going on from snowplows, gritters, tractors working to extricate cars from that area down near Dalwhinnie. We understand this evening that traffic is now moving on that route, but the road is closed, and priority has obviously been given to getting vulnerable people out of that situation. It's clearly been a very challenging day for those who are trying to make it home after the Christmas festivities, although things are due to improve overnight.
Ian McInnes, thank you. The former European Commission President, Jacques Delors, has died at the age of 98. He was considered to be the architect of modern Europe, a passionate advocate in the 1980s and 90s of closer European integration, and a man who played a key role in the design of the euro and creation of the single market. Adam Fleming looks back at his life.
He was the architect of modern Europe. In the 80s and 90s, the president of the European Commission thought the EU should come more closely together, socially, economically and politically. Some British Conservatives reacted in horror.
No, no, no.
Born to a working-class, devoutly Catholic family, Jacques Delors first became a banker. In 1981, President Mitterrand appointed him finance minister. 4 years later, he headed for Brussels.
Good friends, they certainly aren't, but Monsieur
Margaret Thatcher signed up to the Single European Act, which tore down barriers to trade. But Delors then championed something she couldn't stomach.
This government has no intention of agreeing to the imposition of a single currency.
The Iron Lady saw him as Europe's new Bonaparte.
That would be entering a federal Europe through the back door.
The Sun said the same, in less diplomatic language. In 1992, the Maastricht Treaty laid the foundations of the euro.
Let's look to the future. With economic and monetary union, the 12 member countries can hope to draw the greatest possible benefit of a common economic area with its social dimension too.
Arguments over that future led to the downfall of Margaret Thatcher and John Major.
Here, Gordon.
Tony Blair and Gordon Brown disagreed on joining the euro. In 2016, Britain decided enough was enough and left.
The British people have spoken, and the answer is we're out.
At times, financial crises in Europe have been blamed on the way the single currency was constructed. But the high priest of European integration never had a doubt.
Jacques Delors, who died in Paris today at the age of 98. Israel is expanding its ground offensive in central Gaza. It comes as an Israeli government spokesman told the BBC that while Israel cannot dismantle Hamas's ideology, it must finish the job of ending the group's rule in Gaza. Hamas is designated as a terrorist organisation by the UK government. The health ministry in Gaza, which is run by Hamas, says at least 195 people have been killed in the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, a political rival of Hamas, has described the war as beyond a catastrophe. Our correspondent Shaima Khalil has the story. You may find some of her report distressing.
No funeral, no dignified burial, no tombstone. A bulldozer carries their bodies into a mass grave, their final resting place. Israeli forces are expanding their ground offensive into the densely populated urban refugee camps in central Gaza. And this is the scene at the neighboring Al-Aqsa hospital. Overwhelmed, they've had to treat the injured on the floor and in hallways.
Across Gaza at the moment, health capacity is at about 20% of what it was 80 or so days ago. So almost all of the hospital beds, almost all of the hospital services have stopped functioning.
On foot, donkey carts, or crammed onto the back of trucks. Those who fled from northern Gaza have come here for safety, but the war has chased them out again. Heavy bombardment continues in the south, and there aren't many places left to go. Israel says the war will last for months and insists the aims are clear.
We can't destroy Hamas's ideology, unfortunately, that's not realistic. But we can remove them from power. We can prevent them from having control over this territorial enclave. And that will do a lot to save lives and prevent future conflict in the region.
In the West Bank, an Israeli airstrike killed 6 Palestinians. The military says they were armed militants. Locals deny it. This as the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has warned that the area could implode. A new refugee camp has now been set up for those twice displaced, first from northern Gaza and now from the center. Abu Radi lost 6 family members. Our houses have been destroyed, he says. This is what's left. It's worse than hell here. More than 21,000 people have now died in Gaza, according to local health officials. Those who've survived are running out of places to flee. Shaima Khalil, BBC News, Jerusalem.
The date of the Chancellor's spring budget has been revealed today. It will take place on Wednesday, the 6th of March. It's likely to be the last opportunity the government has to announce changes to tax and spending plans before a general election next year. Our political correspondent Helen Catt is with me, so a very significant moment for the government next year.
Yeah, the budget is always a big moment, but this will be even bigger than usual because it's an election year. So for the Conservatives, this is their chance to make their last big economic pitch to voters. And there's already speculation about how they might do that, particularly around tax cuts. So today there have been reports that the Chancellor is planning to abolish inheritance tax. It's an idea that was talked up ahead of the autumn statement last month, but ultimately it didn't happen. And today, Downing Street has appeared to be slightly dampening down these reports, a spokeswoman saying that she wasn't going to comment on speculation and pointing to the fact that only a very small number of households pay it. Opposition parties, as you'd expect, are being pretty dismissive. Labour says that there is nothing the government could do in March that could repair the damage it's done to the economy. The Liberal Democrats are pointing to flatlining growth and say it's too late to turn the tide. There has also been speculation about what the announcement of the date of the budget could mean for the date of the election. Well, it certainly leaves the option open of holding it in May, but I don't think it makes it any more certain.
Helen, thank you. The National Trust says the UK's increasingly unpredictable weather patterns are causing chaos for nature. It warns climate change is upsetting the regular rhythm of the seasons, putting species at risk. But the Trust says it is finding ways to build increased resilience into our ecosystems, as our climate editor Justin Rolat has been finding out.
The seasons are changing, says the National Trust, with hotter summers and milder winters. Oh yeah. and our shifting seasons are affecting the natural world all around us.
There's quite a few of them on there.
Yeah.
Red deer are rutting later in the year. That is when stags do battle to attract females. It means their babies are increasingly being born in the autumn instead of the summer.
They're unable to get the fat reserves on to get them through the winters. These weather conditions take the heat and energy out of anything, and they're just not capable of surviving. So we're seeing a higher mortality rate.
And it's not just deer. All our plants and wildlife depend on the cycle of the seasons. You may have noticed grass needs to be mowed later into the year, for example. Many plants and trees flower earlier, making them susceptible to cold snaps and affecting the pollinators and birds that feed on them.
Nature's a really good indicator of climate change, but we need to help nature in order to help ourselves, because nature can deal with the challenge if it's given the space and the time.
On this estate in Somerset, the National Trust has reset a river. Diggers have filled in the main channel of the Aller. Over the years, it had been deepened and straightened to help drain farmland. Now that has been reversed, and the water is finding its own way through the floodplain.
Let the water do what it wants to do, and what it wants to do is create this amazing habitat with just channels all the way through the landscape, pools, ponds, wetlands, and all the water, instead of going down like a drain, it's just been soaked up into the landscape.
These represent another success on the same estate. Baby beavers born to adults released into 2 large pens.
Now, they call beavers ecosystem engineers. Well, just look at this dam. This is some serious engineering.
It took just a few months for the beavers to build the dam, and the new wetland area it has created is another haven for all sorts of species. It is evidence, says the National Trust, that given space, nature can rebound and establish the resilience it needs to endure the impacts of our changing climate. Justin Rowlatt, BBC News, Somerset.
And finally, over Christmas, BBC Radio 4's Today programme has been broadcast with the help of some notable guest editors, including authors, scientists and musicians. This morning it was the turn of the motoring journalist James May. He chose to find out when driverless cars might make it onto the nation's roads, and it could be sooner than you think, within the next 2 years possibly. Last month I went out on the roads in one such driverless car.
It's very strange, isn't it?
This driverless car is being developed in London. It uses artificial intelligence to create a vehicle that essentially thinks for itself. With 6 cameras on board and a powerful computer, it has learnt to make its own decisions about its speed, steering, brakes, and navigating itself around the city's obstacles. For now, a safety expert sits behind the wheel just in case, but it's the car's so-called brain that is deciding what to do, making around 10 decisions every second. The end of 2026 is when the government thinks driverless cars should become a reality. The former Top Gear presenter, James May, is not so convinced.
It's going to be effectively autopilot on certain roads that are very well defined, very well marked, and free of other issues, to be honest. So it's motorways. There are no pedestrians, or not unless something's gone very badly wrong, no cyclists, no stray dogs, no shop fronts or anything like that.
How comfortable drivers, cyclists, even pedestrians will feel about the hands-off approach isn't yet clear. Now let's have a look at the weather. Ben Rich is here with the latest on that storm that's sweeping the UK.
Yes, Storm Garrett has made its presence felt across all parts of the UK, but as we saw earlier in the programme, it is Scotland that bore the brunt. Just in the last couple of hours, we've seen a gust of 88 miles per hour at Fair Isle. Plenty of other places, though, not too far behind across Scotland, but also England, Wales and Northern Ireland. We've had flooded roads, we've had roads closed due to snow across the Scottish Highlands. It's all because of this. It looks beautiful on our satellite picture. This swirl of cloud, this is Storm Garrett, and the worst of the weather over the next couple of hours will be across the Northern Isles, Orkney and particularly Shetland. Gusts of 85 miles per hour or more, a mix of rain, sleet and snow. There'll be blizzard conditions for a time, but also actually turning increasingly windy across western coasts of Wales and England, gusts of 75 miles per hour and lots of showers being flung eastwards, some of those heavy and thundery, cold enough for frost and indeed ice across the northern half of Scotland tomorrow morning. Now, tomorrow, it's a day of sunshine and showers, really. Some of the showers very heavy, with the odd flash of lightning, the odd rumble of thunder, wintry over high ground in the north of the UK. But in Scotland tomorrow, it will not be as windy. However, Northern Ireland, England and Wales will once again be very blustery indeed. So some further disruption is possible. North to south temperatures of 7 to 13 degrees. And then it doesn't really end on Friday. Some showers, some of which could be wintry, but in northern Scotland the winds pick up again. A mix of rain, sleet and snow, the chance of gales, and if anything, it's going to feel just a little bit colder. And then let me briefly show you what's coming our way for the weekend. It is another area of low pressure, another deep area of low pressure. This could again bring some very heavy rain and the potential for some very strong winds. Sophie.
Ben, thank you. And that's it from us. I'll be back with all the latest at 10. It's time now for our news teams where you are. Goodbye.
Hello, good evening. An inquest has heard a woman whose body was found at the site of an explosion in Trondheim died from traumatic crush injuries. 40-year-old Danielle Evans was found dead on December the 14th. A police investigation into the explosion on Treforest Industrial Estate is ongoing. David Grundy reports.
The after